Hi, X-Fun Carter here again. I wanted to do another tutorial about how we play ground control, about how we set up a game. There's a couple other things. First off, ground control is free. You can get it for free, and if you go to Knox's blog, gcvets.wordpress.com, you can find the links where you can download it. But you also need to get GameRanger, which is kind of this service which ties into the LAN plugs in a lot of these older games which have kind of fallen by the wayside. There's a few out there, like Tungle or whatever, but we play GameRanger. We find that works better. Now, a couple things about playing ground control through GameRanger. You start at GameRanger, and so you have to download that. And then what happens is you join a room, and then the host launches the game, and it brings you in here. You go to multiplayer, and then you go to the LAN, local area network, and the host will have a map set up right here. He doesn't now, so I'm just going to make one. There's a couple other things that I wanted to talk about. The setting up a map is done. This is how you do it if you're a map host. So I'm just doing it right now. And let me just pick a map here. I'll choose this one. There's a couple other things that I want to mention. Okay, here's where in the prior tutorial I mentioned all these settings. There's a couple other things I wanted to mention. First of all, we always play not vital APC. If you have vital APC, you'll fail, you die as soon as your APC gets killed, which is kind of stupid because your troops can no longer fight on without you. There's a few maps out there that have no APC, which is completely, this doesn't work either. I mean, ground control has an APC. This is the way it works. This is how we play. We always play non-vital APC. We generally always play with normal damage. And again, reinforcements off, time of about 25 minutes, no score limit. The tech level here, all that does is it's from 1 to 6. If you set it for 1, you're only going to get infantry units. So generally, we always set it for 6. I think if you set it for 4, you're not going to get artillery and beams, or setting it for 4 and 5 takes away some of the support units. So we just generally always play tech level 6. And, alright, so, these are the settings. There's something else. Air units as an aircraft. By default, the way we play, aircraft units aren't allowed unless explicitly stated otherwise. Probably one game in 20 we might play with air units, but generally we don't play. Ground control, we don't play with air units. Ground control works really as a ground warfare game. When they included the air units, they made them operate just like land units. In other words, they're positional units. You go send your air unit to point X and it goes there and stays there. That's not the way air really works. Air swoops in, drops napalm or whatever, and then flies away. And they got that right in World in Conflict, but because of that, we just generally don't play with air units. Again, unless somebody gets really, they want to, unless you're bored. We have been doing some air games of late, just to try to mix things up. Anyway, there's a couple other units I want to talk about. The other thing is this. The guy on top here, who is the host on GameRanger, once you start a game, that guy has to hit this button here, start mission, first before anybody else. Otherwise, if one of the non-host players tries to launch before the host has launched the game, he'll crash out and you'll have to remake the server and everything. So that's another thing. So we take air off. 95% of the time we don't have air. That's how we play. And there's a couple other things. One thing I want to talk about is I'm alt-tabbing in and out of this game, GroundControl. And I'll just do that now, and you're going to get a white screen. So I'm now looking at my operating system, my desktop, and I come back. This may take me a couple times to do this. It's just an irritating thing about this game. Sometimes when you come back, I don't know whether it's going to... Yeah, okay. You get this mouse pointer, this ugly mouse pointer from the desktop, which is frozen there. So the way to deal with that, it's kind of cheesy. It's a workaround, but if you alt-tab back in, when you come back to GroundControl, if you hit the alt key a bunch of times, it generally gets rid of that mouse pointer. So that's a little thing to learn. Okay, another thing I want to talk about. There's a couple things, a couple special equipments that we, in the past we haven't allowed them. We're kind of tolerating them a little bit more now. One of them is this guy here, the Vortex Field, which is a special on the Order Light Hoverdyne. Sometimes, years ago, we had a standing rule that we wouldn't allow this special, the Vortex Field. It's extremely powerful special. I'm going to show it to you in a few minutes. Lately, we've been kind of tolerating it. Some of the younger players have been coming in with a Vortex Field, but generally we don't. I think if it got used a lot, we probably would go back to not allowing it anymore. And because it's a very unbalancing special. And I'll show it to you. So this is what a Vortex Field looks like when you're playing it. This is what it looks like to you. Or, let me just leave this here for a second. I'll just use a video trick to simulate what it looks like. What it does is it makes all your units are all friendly units inside that field invisible. So to the other side, basically, this is what it looks like for the other side. They can't see your units. So that's the effect of a Vortex Field. And you can tell that it can be it's very, very powerful special equipment, which, you know, players might use it too much, they might exploit it, and then you get into stupid gameplay. And anyway, I just thought I'd point that out. Another special that is debatable is the speed booster on Order units. In particular, when you apply it to, the only two that have it is the light and the heavy. When you give a heavy a speed booster, it turns it into an incredibly powerful unit. It just can fly across the map and do tons of damage, and it's really hard to kill. So that's another special that you might want to not permit in your games, depending on whether players abuse it or not. So that's another one. So I think that's about it. So yeah, that's it for the second tutorial, and see you in the game server.